Texas Land Commissioner and candidate for Texas Attorney General. He joins us now. George, welcome back.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Hey, George, it looks like things got substantially worse since the last time we spoke, if that's at all possible. You're talking about tens of thousands from over 100 countries coming in the border. What kind of financial and physical drain has it been on the people of Texas?
Well, we're actually putting together the accounting right now. I've had a chance to visit with the county judge that represents the area of Del Rio, where, of course, we saw imagery of 20,000, estimates ranging from 15 to 21,000 Haitians under the international bridge there. And he declared a state of emergency. The governor did as well in his county, but FEMA has refused to, and this president, declare this a national disaster declaration. The governor has, as of today, filed an appeal to that ruling to say, look, we can't just be on the tab for this incursion and the massive amounts of incursions and apprehensions that we've had to undertake at the state level this year alone. So this is an ongoing process, but clearly this administration is not going to help out the state of Texas. This special session, we did appropriate an additional $1 billion to support what is known as Operation Lone Star, and that's for deploying as many DPS troopers as we possibly can to the southern border, and to help complete the unfinished Trump wall, the 300 miles that were appropriated federal monies, but that we're going to help fund at the state level. So, Brian, we're working on the definitive figure, but right now indications are not good that the Biden administration is going to do what former presidents have done, including President Obama, and that is to actually support states like Texas when facing a huge crisis like this.
If Title 42 goes away, everything gets substantially harder. Can you tell everybody what that would mean?
So Title 42 has been an effective tool utilized by our honorable Border Patrol officials to immediately remove and deport folks under public health guidelines. This has been one of the great hypocrisies of our current policy under the Biden administration, is that we have mask mandates, vaccination requirements, but yet when it comes to those that come here illegally, there's no such requirement to be tested or even vaccinated. And so this is an effective tool that the Biden administration has threatened to remove from the authority of our Border Patrol officials to deport. We've used it sparingly in the context of the Haitian migrant caravan, but when I talk to Border Patrol officials along the border, they say that the administration is looking at ways to curtail this authority that they can utilize. And it's one of the last remaining authorities, because Mayorkas did declare this week that ICE agents cannot apprehend, detain, arrest, or deport illegals strictly on the basis of being here illegal. It has to be incident to another crime, which is crazy, Brian, that they are committing a crime when they are here.
I know.
But yet this administration has decided that they're not going to apprehend.
But you know what's amazing, George? Nobody knows how to explain you or your family politics. So whatever you believe, you have to look at the polls and say, okay, what do the people want? And if you look at his approval rating as it relates to immigration policies in general, 24% approval. The border, the Mexican-Texas border, 23% approval. In what planet is that something that you shouldn't tackle as a president?
I don't get it. I mean, I've spent a lot of time thinking about the rationale, and there's one or two explanations, and the strongest one is that he feels, honestly, that he's building political loyalty within the Hispanic community. And I'm here to tell you, as the son of a legal immigrant, that it's doing the actual opposite. That I talked to Democrats far and wide throughout the state that have said and told me that they've never been more embarrassed by their president than the current one, particularly those that are in elected leadership positions along the border that have seen firsthand a spike in homicide, spike in human trafficking, spike in narcotics trade, where cartels thrive in this environment, making over $15 million a day, the very lucrative trade just on the drug side of it, of the equation. So it's bad policy, but it's good for politics. And, you know, just as a concerned Texan, most of us, including Democrats and independents, are saying enough is enough. We've got to stand up. We've got to enforce our laws and restore a sense of security. And, of course, encourage other Americans to know that this is a national security issue that's not just limited to the southern border. Governor Abbott just welcomed 10 additional governors just recently this week in highlighting the spike in opioid trade, for example, in Ohio with Governor DeWine and other great governors throughout the Midwest that say because of the transiting and the dangers that we've seen in South Texas now have made their way to their respective jurisdictions. So this is a national issue.
I want you to hear what Rodney Scott also told Brett about the border wall.
We're paying contractors. For a while, it was almost $5 million a day between DOD and DHS to not build the border wall. There's
wait. $5 million a day to not build the wall.
To not build a wall.
Even though they have all the stuff,
There are stacks and stacks of border wall panels. There's hundreds of miles of fiber optic cabling. There's hundreds of cameras that were being installed with that that are just sitting. There's no action being taken.
I mean, what do you think? I guess this is not news to you, but when you hear it laid out by somebody that did this for a living up until a month ago, what do you think?
Well, he's absolutely right. And I've seen it firsthand, and that's why I brought a lawsuit against the Biden administration, not only because of his actions being illegal under the Impoundment Control Act, but because this is just sensible management of taxpayer dollars. The Biden administration absolutely is incurring millions of dollars of unspent contractor and breakup fees with contractors up and down the border. The good news is the state of Texas will step in and assume some of those contractual responsibilities to build our own wall.
Have you started yet?
Temporary or permanent. So right now, Texas Facility Commission is procuring contract. They selected 2 contractors. We have dedicated, the state at least, at the land office, over 200,000 acres. So there's still quite a bit of engineering. There's a little bit of eminent domain work with private landowners. But considering that the state can build on its own acreage managed by the land office, we're moving forward right now on engineering and feasibility to actually construct. But it's wasteful. And my lawsuit, it's right now in the U.S. Federal District Court of the Southern District of Texas, highlights the fact that over $5 billion was appropriated for 700 miles, but only a fraction of that was actually spent. And so we have a long way to go to further secure the border. And regretfully, the coyotes, the smugglers, the migrant caravans know that Del Rio is one of our more unfenced areas of the southern border. Frankly, it's just the Rio Grande Valley and El Paso that are our most fenced areas. But they're smart. They know exactly the thoroughfares. They know the transit routes to get through our border, to get to federal highways, and then transit to other parts of the country.
Right, but it just allows you to ferry. You can save manpower when you put up a barrier. Simple as that. George P. Bush, our guest, wants to be the next Attorney General in Texas, currently the Land Commissioner. It's a huge job. The other big story that we covered personally that I was on the ground with you is natural gas, the fracking and the drilling. In federal lands, it has stopped thanks to this president. Now, natural gas shortages are global, and we are begging OPEC to drill more. How much short of capacity or where you were a year ago is Texas? And I know a lot of Texas companies own land in and drill in New Mexico. So having said that, tell everyone the reality on the ground.
So this is yet another America Last policy of the Biden administration. I never thought in my wildest dreams that an American president would get on the phone and beg foreign leaders to produce more oil and gas when we can actually develop it here, employing American jobs and creating opportunities in our own communities. And by the way, if they really do care about the environment, the carbon intensity of an American oil and gas well is a fraction of that in Saudi Arabia or Russia and other parts of the Middle East. But we are facing a shortage, the lowest inventory in, I think, over 20 years of natural gas. This is significantly going to affect the Northeast in particular, where we've seen a contract in New England exceed over $20 per MMBTU. So for just frame of reference, I mean, that means the barrel of oil equivalent would be well over West Texas Intermediate, so that's over $100. So we're looking at higher heating bills. We're looking at higher power prices. So the constituents that the Democrats claim to represent are actually being the most impacted by an America Last energy policy. So, let's hope for a warm, mild winter. But that's not a good policy. We need more fossil fuels, more base fuels. That's what we learned from our Texas winter grid crisis. And Texas hopefully can lead. Unfortunately, this administration has hamstrung the rest of the country to develop this vital resource that we're going to need this cold winter.
So I want to put on your analyst hat for a second. Beto O'Rourke, who looks like he's going to run for governor, might have competition for Matthew McConaughey, and kind of called him out. So Matthew McConaughey, the actor, who hasn't said he's in, but doesn't comment on anybody's policies, said this.
Before we start saying, hey, this is where I stand, this is where I stand, which creates already a divide, or 50% of the people are going to come at you. Let's answer these other questions about purpose of democracy. All right, what is progress? How about this question? Do we really want to be a United States of America?
What do you think? Is he ready?
No, I don't. I mean, you can't win a race in Texas on platitudes and generalities and, poet philosophy, which is what he has described himself. Look, he deserves a lot of credit for being a good actor. He's been very philanthropic, not only here in Austin, but for other situations throughout our state, like Hurricane Harvey. But when it comes down to the brass knuckle element of Texas politics, which can be rough and tumble, he's starting to get the real questions, like where you actually stand on the issues. And Beto has basically echoed what Governor Abbott and a lot of others have said, and that is, where are you on the issues? Again, I think that he's, an interesting figure here in Texas, well recognized. But when it comes down to it, the public is going to want to know where you are on life, where you are on free exercise of your faith, where you are on free enterprise ideas that have made our state so resilient and a place and a beacon of hope where people are moving here every single day. So if he's going to run for the highest office in the land here, he's going to have to answer some real questions. I don't ultimately see him running, but I do look forward to the race against Beto as a Republican nominee, because this guy represents the liberal progressive wing of our state. And I look forward to that fight in the contest of ideas.
Yeah, it's always great to go to Texas and say, I'll take your guns away. That usually resonates. George, how about you as Attorney General? Maybe you should tell us why you think now's the right time for you to make that move.
Well, I'm not going to sit idly by, as we talked about with respect to illegal immigration, and see my state under attack, and our values, frankly, in the courthouse. I respect Ken as a person, but the reality is, because of the cloud of legal suspicion over his head, he's been ineffective as our top attorney. We deserve, in our state, a population of 28 million, somebody who's going to be focused on the job day in, day out, secure our border, backing law enforcement more than just with rhetoric, but with actual action, and getting things done in the legislature. And because of that broken trust between the legislature and the AG's office, we've been unable to expand the authorities to take on human trafficking, or deadbeat, lazy prosecutors, say here in Austin, that have decided not to prosecute any narcotics cases, similar to what we're seeing in San Francisco, LA, and other parts of our country. So I'm not, as a resident of Austin, I've seen this defund the police movement firsthand, and what it means to a community like ours, where our homicide rate is at an all-time high. And I'm just, as a Texan, I'm just not going to sit back. I'm going to offer myself in this role. I'm going to travel the state, run a retail campaign, engage with the grassroots. And so far, so good. We've been picking up some great endorsements and support throughout the state.
George P. Bush, nobody works harder, and he served in the military as well. George P. Bush.